Syrian Kurds accused Islamist rebels of using chemical weapons against them in the city of Aleppo. Islamic State is using Nazi methods to breed young mujahedeen, this according to a brand new study. And billionaire Donald Trump wins 3 states in the latest U.S. Republican vote, with some of the country's business giants now eyeing a plan to try to stop the unstoppable Trump. Just turning midday in Moscow. Thanks for joining us here on RT International. We have your latest worldwide news headlines. Islamist rebels have used chemical weapons in an attack on a district in the Syrian city of Aleppo. That's according to the Kurdish fighters who control that area. Now, this is unverified footage released by them showing what's believed to be a cloud of yellow phosphorus. The Kurdish fighters, known as the YPG, have named several Islamist factions which could have been responsible, although they did not mention Islamic State or al-Nusra. RT's Lizzie Phelan has just returned from that same area of Aleppo. She has the following details.
Very alarming reports coming from the Aleppo neighborhood of Sheikh Maksuz, which I was in just yesterday. Now, the YPG, the predominantly Kurdish militia that controls the neighborhood, has released an official statement about this alleged attack.
We hereby inform you that on March the 8th at 1500 hours, shelling with rockets that carry chemical materials, which we believe to be yellow phosphorus, took place in Sheikh Maksud neighborhood by Syrian armed opposition factions.
The rebel attack on Sheikh al-Maksud in Aleppo left 6 people dead and dozens of civilians injured. The Islamists got hold of chemical weapons, including phosphorus. This poses a major threat to civilians.
Now, I've just got off the phone with some of the YPG fighters that we met yesterday, and they said that several soldiers are in hospital. They had symptoms of foam coming from their mouths, itching skin. Now, when we were there yesterday, really the ceasefire that's being implemented across Syria is having very little impact there. There was a constant array of gas jars being fired into the neighborhood, and the day before we were there, it was a particularly deadly day of attacks. 9 civilians were killed. We saw one of the homes that was leveled in those attacks with a family of 7 killed.
Yellow phosphorus is an unpurified version of white phosphorus, a highly toxic substance prohibited from use in any civilian areas. Similar to napalm, it causes horrific injuries. Despite that, though, it has been frequently used in many conflicts.
Any use in an urban area, it seems, would violate international law. This is something that should be investigated internationally. Human rights groups and the United Nations should be investigating right now. It's a good thing there's a ceasefire, and it's a bad thing that some elements want to stop that ceasefire and get back to having war.
In fact, it's not the first time Kurdish-controlled areas have come under attacks from chemicals. That was last month. Dozens of people were wounded by what was believed to be a chlorine bomb used by Islamic State in northern Iraq. And earlier, a source at the world's chemical weapons watchdog said ISIL used a toxic agent back in August. Now, samples were taken after 35 Kurdish troops fell sick on the battlefield, and lab tests found traces of mustard gas. CIA Director John Brennan has since said that ISIL could very well be making its own chemical weapons.
We have a number of instances where ISIL has used chemical munitions on the battlefield. There are reports that ISIS has access to chemical precursors and munitions.
If you go back to 2013, the United States government was blaming Assad for having used sarin on his own people. Even though James Clapper and John Brennan, the CIA director, have now admitted 3 years later that ISIS has access to chemical weapons, they've never really explained that possibly, even back in 2013, it was the terrorist groups that staged that attack of Syrian in order to get the United States to enter into the fray in Syria. And I would imagine that if Islamic State has access, many of these other groups could have access as well.
It is impossible to resolve the Syrian crisis with military means. That's according to a statement released by Syrian opposition members following a meeting on Monday at the Russian airbase in Latakia. Delegates also said that any work on creating a new constitution must be staged inside Syria.
The joint ceasefire plan by Moscow and Washington gives the Syrian people a last chance to stop the bloodshed and devastation. The fragile truce gives us cautious optimism. All attempts to isolate part of the Syrian people and to draw up a constitution in the capitals of other countries without taking into account the views of the majority of Syrians are doomed to failure. They can only make the situation worse and turn the whole process into a political farce.